Colorado Conversations here on our free Fox 31 Plus app. I am Talya Cunningham, and so we are inching closer and closer to that time of year when kids are probably a little bit sad. Parents might be excited and rejoicing, and that's because kids are going to be heading back to the classroom. So we have a very special guest in studio joining us. We have Danielle Vice, Director of Denver Health School-Based Integrated Behavioral Health Services. Danielle, thank you so much for giving us your time this afternoon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So there's a lot to unpack. Before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm the Director of School-Based Behavioral Health Services. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been at Denver Health since about 2006 overall. And so I support the programming of the team, provide a lot of supervision, clinical supervision, collaborate a lot with our community partners as well.
Awesome. And I know that we've had you guys on Fox 31 before talking about some of the programs. So you're the perfect person to talk about all things we need to know back to school. So Aurora is actually already started. So we've got the big districts coming up. We've got Jefferson County, of course, Denver Public Schools coming up. Some of those big districts in our area. So those will be up soon in the next week or so, August 19th for those big ones. Talk about what your advice to parents is to get back in that schedule.
Yeah, so a lot of emotions come up during this time of the year, right? Our kids have been off for a long time now, I think about 10 weeks. And so I think, with that, it's always good to start kind of practicing for the school year. So I really recommend, we think about school, nutrition, preparing for the school day. So I would say, probably most of our kids at this point are staying up late, sleeping in longer. So I would start there with, let's try to tweak the sleep schedule a little bit. So even if it's starting about 2 weeks before school starts, let's start moving it back, even if it's by 15 or 30 minutes, and keeping a consistent wake-up time. The more that we can do that, the better that kids are going to feel. We know that getting good sleep really helps with focusing better, energy, and mood regulation. So, and just our immune system as well. So sleep is so critical for kind of everything in our body. So I would really start with sleep and taking some small steps, right? Even if it is just that 15 minutes of going to bed earlier and then getting up a little bit earlier. And then I would also just say, I think for a lot of kids, they may be transitioning to middle school or starting high school. So I would, maybe even let's go to the school prior to it starting. Let's see how this feels. Let's see what is it like to even get ready in the morning. Do we get ready the night before? Just kind of figuring out all of those pieces so they feel really prepared to start school.
Yeah, and you make a great point. It's the little things that matter, packing your backpack at night or even laying out your school outfit. I know we used to do that when I was younger. It was exciting, especially back to school. But you make a good point about those transition times, especially for those elementary school students going into middle school and then even middle school into high school, where it can be kind of frightening. How would you kind of advise parents to talk about that with their kids?
So I think taking some time every day to connect with your kids is so important, even if you only have 10 minutes, but make that count. I think it's really important to be validating their emotions, talking with them about this is normal. It's normal to feel maybe scared or anxious and also maybe excited, right? There's a lot of different emotions they may be feeling. And then talking about what would help you to cope, right? What are we going to do to maybe start practicing? Do they have a good friend that's going to be going to school with them? Let's maybe do a play date before. Let's go to school together. I'm just kind of talking through what's going to help them. And maybe talking through some coping skills during the school day.
And that might actually kill two birds with one stone. We're talking about getting kids motivated, because I know over the summer, with the summer camps and pools and hanging out and staying up late and kind of eating what you want, it's hard to get back in that routine of I got to focus, I got to get back to school. So that might help actually kids get motivated. Do you have any other tips for getting kids kind of okay, I got to focus back for school? It's hard. It's hard for adults.
It is hard. I think, I would model what you want your kids to do. So, right, everybody is eating healthy. We're getting up earlier. We're getting ready together, right? So really modeling for them and talking them through it, right? Just saying I get it. This is a big change after having so much time off.
Yeah.
And it's just starting small. I think we don't want to expect too much too soon. It's a process, and It's okay if it's a little bit bumpy, but hopefully they'll get there maybe by middle of September.
We hope so, right?
Yes.
You gradually have to work your way into that routine. Is there any difference between the little ones, the elementary school students, and as far as when we get to the high school level, as far as sleep, how much they need, what time to kind of go down and get up?
Yeah. So, for our teenagers, just biologically, their clocks are really different. So their system is saying, I want to stay up late. I want to sleep in. Thankfully, a lot of our metro school districts have changed their start times. And so they're starting later to kind of accommodate our teens, which is great. And our littles, right, they need maybe to be going to bed earlier. So that is very different. So working with your little ones to go to bed earlier. And then I think, just giving your teens a little bit of, autonomy to support them, but also allow them to kind of like figure out what's going to work for them too. I think, a lot of teens are not going to be able to go to bed at 8 or 9 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's all about finding that balance and what works for you.
Absolutely.
And like you said, I think practice makes perfect. When you find out what works for your kids, it kind of trickles down.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
and
think practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know kids probably don't want to do that, but
Right.
parents should probably start early. I want to talk about another thing that's kind of dominating the news now, too, is when it comes to screen time. First of all, give me your clinical opinion on screen time.
I think, the research more and more is showing that it's not good probably for any of us to have a lot of screen time. I think it's oftentimes like causing more problems with focusing overall and anxiety, right? We have seen increases in anxiety, depression with the onset of smartphones. But as with anything, right, there's definitely some pros to phones as well. I think a lot of our kids, right, they are looking things up. They're keeping in contact with good friends. But I think we need to have some limits with it.
Yeah, and some schools, I mean, there are some countries right now, like Australia, that have
Right.
the statewide ban on that. I mean, Colorado hasn't gone that far yet, but there are some bell-to-bell bans right now. Denver's going to be implementing this upcoming school year, so it's going to be a little different. And like you said, there are pros and cons to both. Obviously, probably the older teenagers don't want to give up those phones, and it goes back to motivation. The social media, we didn't have that when we were younger to entice us. So how do you get kids motivated in the realm of screen time and social media?
Yeah, I think that it's a tough one.
It is.
Right? I would say, for your teenagers, that's harder. For your littles, I would really help them with like setting the boundaries for them. Right? I think you probably it's not recommended to have a phone before the age of 14, and to be really monitoring what they're doing on on tablets that they have. For teenagers, it's hard. I think talking with them about what the research is showing and asking them, how are you feeling when you're online? What are you noticing in social media? I know when I talk with students, they often tell me that, I'm noticing that like this makes me feel crummy. And so let's be talking about that. And maybe it can be more of a decision that they're making too to cut back.
That's interesting that you say that. So you're hearing straight from the horse's mouth that the social media is kind of getting to some of the kids' mental health.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I always talk with kids about like, what are you viewing on social media? Some people are looking at cats and funny things, and then other people are drawn to things that are a little darker. And so let's talk about that, right? That's where you really want to be connecting with your kiddo as much as you can. I know that's hard with teens because they like to be difficult sometimes and push
Right.
parents away, but trying to keep the lines of communication open to have those conversations.
That's a great point. And what about when we talk about screen time as far as kind of, we do it as adults called doom scrolling, when you're laying in bed, you can't
Right.
really sleep, so you're just scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or watching YouTube videos or whatever it may be. That does affect your sleep too.
It absolutely does. So we always recommend no screens at least an hour before bed, and not just cell phones, like any screens, watching television, being on a tablet. Even if you're reading on a tablet, it's not recommended because that light's going to impact your ability to fall asleep. So I like to just let them know that, and let's find some other alternatives. Reading from a book. Could they do some drawing, coloring, movement, something else? So not just like taking something away, but let's find something that to add that they enjoy.
And it also kind of goes back to the implementing of the schedules you were talking about, where,
Absolutely.
okay, maybe during the summer we got an hour before bed with screen time. Now we're going to get 15 minutes and then you can read your book and then it's time for go to bed.
Right.
Implementing that schedule, kind of a balance.
Right. Yeah, I always recommend like what can we do to find some calming kind of regulating activities before bed. I think that's, depends kind of on the age. A lot of teens will tell me like listening to some like light music, doing some coloring is often helpful. Story time for younger kiddos is always great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other advice as far as like getting kids to go to sleep on time, that transition?
I would say, I mean, it takes time,
Yeah.
right? Like even for adults, like let's say you're traveling and you're a little bit jet lagged, right? It takes a time to start getting back on track. It's going to take time as we transition back to school. So I would be patient, and talk with them what's working, what's not. I think if it becomes really problematic, then I would probably have a conversation with your healthcare provider or pediatrician. We have integrated behavioral health therapists at all of our clinics to really like work with kiddos to see what's going on.
Okay, that's some great advice to get kids in this routine of schedule and, of course, bedtime as school quickly does approach, and some are already in school. So we're going to take a quick break, Danielle, and then we're going to come back. I want to talk about nutrition. I also want to talk a little bit more about mental health, okay?
For sure.
All right, we'll be right back on our free Fox 31 Plus app. Well, welcome back into Colorado Conversations on our free Fox 31 Plus app. I am Talya Cunningham. Our conversation does continue with Denver Health. Danielle Weiss is still in studio. We're talking all things parents need to know when it comes to back to school. And we left off talking about screen time. We've covered a lot. We also talked about kind of getting in that routine. Now we want to talk about nutrition and how important that is for children of all ages, really, to get back into the routine and also helping them learn more and educationally. So what kind of basic advice do you have for parents out there?
Yeah, I think about, nutrition similar to sleep can really help to promote learning and focus and mood regulation. So I know there's a lot of kiddos, I talk to kids all the time that they don't eat breakfast. And even if it's something small, like trying to get in some protein, maybe a little bit of fruit, something to start the day, it's going to help so much more to be able to be learning and sitting through class, being able to retain that knowledge if we have those nutrients. I think, I often tell kids, even if you're not eating breakfast, can you take something with you to have some snacks through the day? Because we know, right, a lot of kids maybe are not hungry first thing in the morning, but at least having something that they can take with them so that they can, when they do get hungry, that they have something.
Yeah, and you make a great point. And even if not all families are set up the same way, a lot of the school districts offer that free breakfast program for kids just to make sure they're getting a healthy start to their day. So they have that energy to maintain. And we know the little ones will burn it out through the day for PE, running around and gym time. So what about I know a lot of kids don't want to eat their vegetables, but that is an important part of getting that well-balanced diet.
It is, yeah. I would, I think for some of the older kids, maybe asking, do you want to help with preparing some meals, doing meal planning, shopping, seeing what they're willing to try. And if they only like spinach, like starting there. Again, I think the palates of younger people are just different. And so let's start small. Maybe I think though you're always adding in more things than like we're taking stuff away, right? It's certainly okay. I don't want to think of foods as like good or bad, but just incorporating more nutrient dense foods than maybe like cookies and chips and those kinds
summertime
of things.
foods that they've all kind of been binging on. We all have just a little bit. Do you find kind of maybe packing a little bit of that with the kind of vegetables and fruits and well balanced, just to not take it all out completely, but just have some of it there?
Right. I think it's always good to offer it and see if they are willing to try, even if they're willing to try a little bit. But yeah, packing that protein, fruits, veggies, some sort of like whole grain is always really important if they're willing to do it. And I would say as much as possible, staying away from like the energy drinks.
Yes.
I know we see a lot of kids that like those, but they can really impact sleep. And sometimes, depending on how much they're having, increased blood pressure. And so we really just want to limit that as much as possible.
And especially here in Colorado, the importance of water. I mean, it's something so
Yes.
basic that we take for granted, but
Right.
it's, especially with our elevation and altitude here, the
Right.
simple importance of water here. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I often see kiddos with water bottles. And so, absolutely, we want to stay hydrated throughout the day. I think about when you're dehydrated, it's harder to think clearly. It also gets us up and we can get our steps in because we're having to run to the bathroom. And right. So, that's just helpful overall to stay hydrated. Right. Especially if you're involved in any sports, which a lot of kids are. So, you want to be able to be getting the nutrition, drinking your water. Totally okay to have a soda here and there, but we, want to stay away from too much caffeine.
Yeah, and what you eat is how you perform kind of in
For
school. It kind of
sure.
goes hand in hand. Can you talk
It
about that a little bit?
does. Yeah, I mean, we know from the research that good nutrition and good sleep is what's really going to promote learning and being able to retain knowledge. So it has been shown to improve academics when kids are getting those meals, right? That a lot of schools now have for all kids to get that breakfast and lunch at school is going to be really helpful for them.
And I think you bring up a great point for parents out there, especially when you have picky eaters.
Right.
One of our anchors here, his kids are very picky. They only eat noodles. And
Right.
so, at the same time, making them a part of that process, I
Yeah.
think is a really great idea for parents out there because it gives the child an option. And it
Right.
also allows a bonding experience to do together or try new things together.
Absolutely. We often recommend that of, what about going and even going to the library, picking out a cookbook, finding some recipes to do together.
Now, we've talked about the kids getting back into the routine. There's some parents out there that might have trouble with the next steps for kids as far
For
as,
sure.
oh my gosh, my baby's going from elementary to middle or middle to high school, or it's their senior year. What's your advice for parents out there that they're maybe sending their kids off to college next year
Yeah.
or, they're struggling kind of with their kids growing up out there?
Right.
It's
Yeah. No,
hard.
I think it is really hard. It can be really scary, especially I think to see your kiddo maybe leaving home and worrying about them. I think as much as possible, going to other people to talk through those feelings versus telling your child, I don't want you to go, or I'm so upset you're leaving, right? It's okay to express, that you're sad and have tears when they go, but right, you want them to be able to feel like I'm ready to do this and you're ready for me to do this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Do you see that a lot with in your line of work with kind of feelings on both sides with
Yeah.
kids and adults?
Yeah, sometimes we see when, for instance, maybe somebody in ninth grade is really struggling to go to school. And parents sometimes feel like they need to protect their kiddos from feeling uncomfortable or having any sort of distress. And so they keep them at home. And we really don't want to do that because that's going to feed into that anxiety. So as much as possible, we want to get kids in the door and start practicing and being exposed to the school and
Okay.
the routine of school.
I know there's so many
Yeah.
parents out here agreeing with you and thanking you for this advice. So our conversation is not done yet. We've got about 5 minutes left. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to join Danielle Weiss with some more advice for you at home. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back into Colorado Conversations. I am Talya Cunningham. Our conversation does continue with Denver Health. We're talking all things parents need to know about going back to school. Now, Danielle Weiss is still in studio joining us, and you are the director of Denver Health School-Based Integrated Behavioral Health Services. We talked about a little about what you do in the beginning, but you guys are kind of shifting the program right now. You've got some new stuff going on.
We do, yeah. So Denver Health has 19 school-based health centers within Denver Public Schools. We provide comprehensive health, medical, dental, health education, behavioral health, and substance use treatment, as well as psychiatry. And our program is shifting a little bit more to a more integrated behavioral health model. So we are creating more access and wanting to do more early intervention, so catching things early. As we've been talking about sleep and nutrition routines, that's a lot of things that we can be covering with kiddos. We know not everybody wants or needs therapy, but sometimes kids need a little bit of support. And so our providers are in the clinics and ready to see kids for some of those visits to support them with maybe some mild stress.
Yeah.
Certainly offering services for more intensive types of, significant anxiety or depression, but also seeing kids when those things are starting to develop so that we can kind of like head them off before they get worse.
Okay. And for parents out there or kids that don't know about these programs that exist, is it something you have to register for? Can you just go at the school that you're with, or how does it work?
So the clinics are available to any student of Denver Public Schools, as well as siblings of students that attend Denver Public Schools up to the age of 21. So we have a phone number that you can call and get scheduled, whether it's to get a vaccine. Yeah. We're doing a lot of well child checks right now, sports physicals. So we hope to see all of our kids in there and supporting kids and families around all of these needs.
And what have you been seeing just on the front lines in a general sense, not a case by case basis? Just have you been seeing kind of more kids struggling with mental health issues or anxiety or needing a little extra support?
I think oftentimes kids really enjoy having that support. And we're seeing kind of across the board. I feel like we see some kids that it's more situational stressors, as well as kids maybe with more significant trauma, anxiety, depression. So we've kind of like see, I think, a broad range of issues, as well as sometimes it's more of maybe a parent struggling with some things. And so we're available to talk with parents, help get them connected to services as well. So we're excited to see our kids back in school.
And what is it like for you to be in that kind of position to be able to help?
You know, I love it. I've been doing this a long time. I think we have such a great team. And it's so fun being in the schools. It's very different than a typical outpatient setting. It's fun to see the kids in their element with friends and doing activities. And and Denver Public Schools, they're great partners with us. So we are very appreciative to be working with them.
So are these clinics in the high schools and middle schools and elementary, or just in the high schools? Or?
So there's a little bit of a mix. So some middle, some high schools. Folks can go to the Denver Health website and look up school-based and see all the locations.
And that's where parents and kids, if they need a little extra support, can find out all the information.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure that's out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, Danielle, and before we let you go, is there anything else that you want to say to parents out there before the kiddos head back to school?
Gosh, probably some deep breaths and one step at a time. Yeah.
It'll get easier with time, right?
It will, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, Danielle Weiss with Denver Health, thank you so much for joining us for Colorado Conversations and for coming in this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us here on our free Fox 31 Plus app. I am Talya Cunningham, and we'll see you next time. Have a good evening.